All right, we will call the April 15th meeting of the Board of Commissioners to order with the flag pledge. First item is disclosures of interest. Are there any? Seeing none. Previous board meeting minutes from April 1st.
Move to approve.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. We approve the board minutes from April 1st. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Review the agenda. Are there any changes?
There are no changes.
Motion to approve?
Motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Moved and seconded. We approve the agenda as presented. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Motion carries. Consent items, we have 9. Any questions? Not.
Approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent items. All those in favor say aye.
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 Same. Motion carries. Finance and Taxpayer Services, School Resource Officer contracts. And this was voted on at the last meeting to reconsider this.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
So I just wanted to mention this is the same information that was presented on the April 1st board meeting. At that time, the board had discussion and ultimately decided to revisit this information and potentially make a decision today when the full board was in attendance. As a reminder, this is the 4th consecutive board meeting in which this topic is being discussed. So I'm not going to read the report word for word as the board is as well aware of everything that's contained in it. I did want to mention on April 1st, staff had presented these cost differences between the SROs and the city policing contract deputies as previously calculated. The differences in those costs, we'll run through those though, was that we had added in the 0.44% additional tax for the paid family medical leave starting in January 2026. That was not previously in the old SRO or in the old policing contracts, as that was not in effect at that time. We used a flat 10% overhead rate for the SRO contracts, whereas the policing contracts stepped up from 0 to 5 to 10%. Health insurance was increased for 2025, utilizing the known figures for this year, while for 2026, it includes a 40% increase, in 2027, a 10% increase. As a reminder, that 40% increase is what Goodhue County's insurance costs would have increased for 2025 had we not had those rates locked in a contract. And then the items that reduced the calculated costs were we had adjusted the SROs down to their 40-hour work weeks, what they actually work. That's less than a typical patrol deputy. Additionally, these SRO positions are not backfilled if they're out for a day at a time, so we didn't add in extra hours for that. Vehicle gas, insurance, and maintenance costs were calculated out, and rather than using a standard rate in the old contract, we also updated the employer liability insurance down to the actual rate charged for law enforcement officers. We also updated the squad car costs for what they're actually using, removed the radar cost as well, as those are not utilized by the SROs. And we also updated the vehicle trade-in value based off the most recent trade-in on one of those SRO vehicles. Again, just as a reminder, the cost of health insurance beyond 2025 is unknown at this time. We are going to be going through the RFP process this year, as you're all aware. Ultimately, health insurance costs are going to be determined by the proposals from the vendors as well as the union negotiations that will be occurring as well. Not going to read through these. figures here as they've been presented multiple times, as well as I know the sheriff office had also put together an additional proposal.
Thank you, Lucas. Board Chair, Commissioners, thank you for entertaining this again. I hope we can come to a resolution today. We've had a lot of questions, a lot of time, a lot of staff time involved in doing all of these numbers. And what we found is schools and municipalities and sheriff's offices all have a slightly different model to come up with their costs. And we couldn't actually find one that's really common to ours. So we've come up with, I think, a fair assessment, taking into true cost considerations. And my recommendation is the attachment that you have that essentially says the sheriff's recommendation for a 3-year contract with our schools that's fair and reasonable, and not overcharging our schools. We're very confident in that. I really don't want to have to do that. So what we've proposed is the first-year contract of the previous numbers of $68,599. I'm fairly certain both school districts will adopt that at their school board meetings. And then to not have to do this again for 2 years would be delightful for our staff. And I would propose a 3-year, and we have those numbers. And of course, they would stay as is where they're at here, 72, 674, 75, 784 for 26, 27, or 27, 28, sorry. With that, I have the staff that did a lot of this work, including Lucas here, for more questions. However, I think we've answered, I don't know, 40 or 50 questions just in the last week. So if there's any more, we'll take them now. But that is my recommendation to the board. Thank you.
Questions? Go ahead, Jason.
Who came up with this 60-40 split? What is that based on?
John, go ahead.
60-40 split, something we've seen in previous contracts. To say that that's the right way to do it or not, there's other districts that use that. So the sheriff had alluded to it throughout the state. Policing contracts, you probably got a few models out there. SRO contracts, you have a ton of them out there. So this is just what we had started using a couple of years ago, but I'd say even the last police contract is roughly based on this. You guys had came with that like $70,000 figure last year, so.
No, I get that, and I didn't know if there's any baseline that we had to use it. So we come up with this true cost, even what the dollar amount that you figure with the 68 isn't a true cost. Let's not utilize it. It's still, even if you take all the items out of there, there's still a lot of, we look at the questions you answered, the overhead, the time, it's not in there. So I question when you look at the 60-40 split, as an example, Todd, when you drive bus, who makes up the 40% difference? You don't take 60%, do you? And so we came up with a dollar amount of the cost for the year when we did this in March 1st or the 18th. That amount, and then we took 40% off of it based on a contract. So even if you look at it and say they don't utilize as much of the car, they don't have the equipment, they still have all the training, all this time. We took the dollar amount. We were told multiple times, we're all here, hey, this could be cheaper because of all it is the car cost. We all agreed. We all looked at it and says, we understand that. Bring us the information. I wasn't expecting to re-vote on this or do anything. We had a dollar amount. We spent $30,000 to come up with all the costs, these true costs. Close. They're not exact. Close. We use that. It's a fairly good number to go when we made that decision in March. Now we're rehashing it again with all this extra time. We had the amount, and they're still getting a 40% discount. They're still getting a 40% discount. You're not getting a 40% discount. I don't give a 40% discount for the work I do. Linda, were you working for 40% less for somebody else paying it? Why are we doing this? So you're going to come up with all these situations about having the SROs in there. Yeah, we're going to change one kid's life. So is every teacher, Are we subsidizing them? Coaches, everybody is doing this. I don't understand. 40% discount, what are we going to gain? Where are we going from? It's not that large of an amount. The two districts, Short of Lake City being primarily Wabasha County, have so much of a large majority of their students are from other counties in the cities. What are they paying for this? Why is this being a burden, or not a burden, but why are the rest of the county having to come up with a dollar amount difference? It's not that much of a difference. It's not significant difference. 73,000, four of us agreed on it. Pretty simple. If the schools can't handle that difference or that much, that's on them. We agreed to it. We got the information brought back to us. I think it was pretty simple and pretty straightforward what we agreed to and what the information we had in March. So
Okay.
I'm not changing my mind on that aspect. So.
Anybody else?
Well, I think I've probably asked more questions than anybody else, and I appreciate the patience of you, John, and you, Lucas, and I didn't talk to you as much, Marty, but I appreciate that. And I know you guys do a good job in these schools, that's no question, and I know you wouldn't be asking for this if you didn't believe it benefited the schools and the students. So I know that. So I don't really think that's what the question is. And I didn't know that school resource officer contracting was as complicated as it is. So as I poked around, I was surprised about a lot of things. One thing I was surprised about was 60-40 didn't mean at all the same thing from one district to another. So most of the contracts were 60% of the full-time salary and wages. They weren't looking at cars. And I think they were doing that in part because it was simple. Whatever the paycheck was, that was split that way. So there wasn't all this work figuring everything else out. And I didn't know that. And the other thing that I didn't know that I learned was I really believed when I sent out emails to the 10 other counties in our district that I was going to find that quite a few of the sheriff's offices did school resource officers. Now, 10 of them told me they didn't, and Greg Wright from Olmsted County wasn't entirely correct because Olmsted does do some, but what he told me was they didn't, okay? And Rod Peterson from Dodge County told me that they did, but the school covered all the costs, which was also not quite true, which means that we county commissioners think we know more than we know sometimes, okay?
Always.
Yes, well, those are things I learned, but I was surprised about that. And, you know, you said at the last meeting, Brad, that maybe it was whoever they asked first, and it could be, but it also could be that cities have responsibility for policing within the city, and that schools are generally in the cities, so that the primary policing responsibility goes to those. And that then it doesn't matter where the students are from, Jason, because they're doing the policing in the city, which is in Pine Island, or it's in Zumbrota, or wherever it is. So I learned that, and so then I wondered how it was that Goodhue County started doing this when at least 9 of these counties said, no, we aren't going to do it. So I wondered about that. And then I also wondered about, you know, you bring up a lot of times, is it really right that Goodhue County gives 2 schools whatever discount we want to say it is, 40% discount, 45% discount, whatever it is. Is it really right to pick a couple of schools and do that with, and then charge the entire county for that discount? And I don't know. Okay, so for me, it seems like it's a pretty easy decision to make a contract decision for next year, that's not too hard. If, you know, we have a low end of 68.4 and a high end of 73.30, and I think it would be easy to say, we don't know what the right number is, but we know it's in that ballpark, and let's split the difference, whatever that is, and let's not spend, you know, an hour arguing about, you know, just a few $1,000s. But then I really wonder if we as a board need to take a little bit more time and consider what makes sense going forward. So I ask people a few questions, and I try not to be leading in the question. But when I ask people in my district, should the county be supporting school resource officers out county if they aren't supporting them in Red Wing, their response is, well, we don't want to be billed twice. We don't want to be billed for the officer in Red Wing and then also be billed for the officer somewhere else. Doesn't mean they're right, but that's the point of view they're having. So the thing I'd be most comfortable with is picking a middle number for next year and taking a little bit more time for the board, and maybe there's time today, but to discuss how we want to do this going forward. That's where I'd be coming from.
Else? Well, I'll just respond. I think the real question is, if 3 more districts came tomorrow, what would you say?
Well, I think that's a problem. You know, I was thinking about
Is it
that.
a problem or is it a policy?
Well,
Is
I
our
think-
policy to support student resource officers? And if it is, then it's whoever comes.
Well, I think we
Not
have to have
pick and choose.
I don't think, I agree with you. But that's why I think, so, you know, part of the reason why I didn't want to get too far into this today is because I don't think I have enough models to know. So when I looked at some of the Olmsted things, they do, I believe, I mean, I tried to find this out too, John, and it doesn't mean I was right in what I found, but I believe Olmsted County does the policing for Dover and Aoda. And I believe they do it for Byron as well. Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah. And it looked like they had a model, at least for Dover and Aoda, where the school paid some, the city that was contracting for those policing services paid some, and the county paid some. And so to me, it might be that we should be willing to pay a certain amount for any district in the county, but not necessarily be willing to take on all of it, kind of like Olmsted did. But I don't want to pretend to say I have the numbers right now. I don't. I just know, and I think one of the problems with taking on all of the districts would be that the Sheriff's Department could probably make use of extra bodies for the 12 weeks that they aren't in the school, but we probably don't need 8 extra bodies or 9 extra bodies for the 12 weeks that they aren't in the school. So it's not, I think we do have to be
If
fair
you
to
did-
everybody.
If you did 8 and they ended up being patrol officers in the summer, that's 1 more officer on each shift. Takes 8 officers to fill the shifts.
Yeah, so I think we need to be fair to every district. I don't disagree with that.
Yeah. So well, maybe it doesn't take, it takes 4. 4 to fill a full shift,
Well, 6 at a minimum.
6 at a minimum. So we'd gain 1 more officer in the summer on patrol. If that happened. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think you're going to get all the districts.
Well,
I don't think
I
they
don't-
can afford it, quite frankly. Even at 68, some of them aren't going to be able to afford it.
Yeah. And that's like a $45,000 discount, which is a pretty good deal. And so we're talking about.
Well, I don't know if it's a discount, because we said, and several on this board have said, true cost is 68 something.
No. True cost is 114, and then we were taking 60% of that true cost. So the true cost is 114.
So now so you want to, I get it. You're questioning the 60-40 split.
I'm not questioning it. I'm just saying, I kind of lost track of your question now. So I apologize for that.
Well, we've done 60-40 in the past,
Yeah, we have.
to a certain degree. Now we're saying we wanted true cost, so we got true cost, and the proposal is still at 60-40 split.
Mr. Chair, can I comment?
Yeah, go ahead.
Just regarding the 60-40, because it got brought up. You know, it's the 40% that the county is paying is paying for the entire county. Our staff is not, just because they're 60-40 in Zumbrota, they're going to be pulled for a crim sex case in Red Wing at any given time. They're going to be pulled over to Holden Township at any given time for a case that's that 40% that the county is paying for. So I just want to be clear that that 40% isn't staying in Pine Island, and it isn't staying in Zumbrota. They're offsetting our investigative staff nearly every day, and we're not replacing them in the school districts. That was the agreement we had last year, that they are okay with them coming out and doing whatever they have to do for the county, and they have been, and we've had this going on for several years, and it's a great. I think the 60/40 is working fantastically.
So I went and talked to Marshall Hallock after our last meeting, and I just asked him how they did it. And the reason is because I just didn't think they were doing 60/40 of the same thing, and I wanted to understand that. So I said, why are you only doing 60 when 1,600 hours is actually 76% of the year, something like that, 75% of the year? He said, well, we're only doing 60 and not 75 because of what you're saying, that the officers get called out because they don't have to backfill all of that. So that's why they took the 15% off the top. And then I said, well, why aren't you charging anything for the car and the uniforms and whatever? And he said, well, that we're just considering a contribution to the school.
Red Wing actually backfills their SROs.
What?
Red Wing actually does backfill their SROs.
Yeah, well, Marshall said they didn't, so I can't, I can,
I'm telling you what they do.
yeah, and I can't, I'm not gonna argue with you about it,
No,
I'm just telling you what he said. And so we're, that's kind of built into it, is what he was saying. But anyway, I think we should make a contract for next year, and maybe we can decide the rest of this today, and maybe we can't.
So are you saying you only want to do 1-year contract?
That's what I'm saying, and take more time to really.
Linda?
Well, I am a firm believer in true program costs, and I do think it's extremely important for us moving forward to know what those numbers are in anything, actually. Otherwise, we end up cannibalizing ourselves when we don't know what something really costs, and therefore we don't charge for it. I thought that was what we got at the beginning, and as Jason said, agreed on it. However, now comes back with different numbers.
Well, we were using patrol numbers
Right,
before,
right.
not SRO numbers,
Right.
which they've pointed out are all the differences.
So I have no, Lucas and his office and his team, they win awards for financial accuracy. I don't win awards for financial accuracy, so I'm not going to question the number that the sheriff and Lucas give me as true program costs. I believe in it. If that is what the true program cost is for the moment, based upon what the sheriff and Lucas's office have come up with, then I would support the sheriff's recommendation. And so that we don't go over this year after year, and that it's easier for the sheriff's department and easier for the schools, I would also support a 3-year contract at this point.
Anybody else?
What would the 27 to 28 be then? The 3-year?
75, 784.
We have 26 to 27 on here at
Go to the
72.
next, click the next agenda.
68,599, 72,674, and 75,784.
Those three, right there.
Yeah, I will agree with Linda on this, so, if the costs are the costs, and that's, where we're.
I have one more question. So then, at least by the 3rd year, we're going to be, I think, around 10,000 less than Red Wing, okay? And so that means it's pretty likely that we're going to be asked to take on, maybe not, but the Red Wing contract and possibly the Ed District. Because if schools can save $10,000 by having the county do it rather than the city, why wouldn't they do that? So are you prepared to do that too?
Well, I think then we'd have to look at whose responsibility is it at that time? Is it because it's in the city of Red Wing that it is the city of police department's responsibility versus the county?
Well, but why wouldn't it be the city of Pine Island or the city of Zambrota's responsibility?
Station, they don't have police force.
Well, except for.
We are their contract.
For Olmsted, even though they're doing it, they're saying the city's contracting for part of that cost. So that's what they're doing, and the same with Dover and Eoda. They're expecting the city to kick in part of that cost. And so,
You know, I know there's a lot of comparisons with other communities. I guess we have to look at what our costs are. We have to look at where we're at. I think if that does happen, then it's something that the sheriff will have to review and present to us in a couple of years and say, you know what, we have a request for 2 more, and what direction do we go then? So.
I think the argument would be if the Red Wing is up in 3 years, if they're 10,000 higher than us, it's because they backfill for their SROs. That's the difference.
well, I think it's because they're doing 60% of the payroll and not 60% in the same way we are. I think they're doing 60%.
Well, didn't it show if we did it that way, we'd be at 63,890?
Andrea did a number, and hers was 70,033. If you look at that one where it says 63, just look at the line that says overhead, excuse me, not overhead, but benefits. In that figure, they're saying the benefits for 12 months is less than the benefits for 9 months.
Well,
You can look at the line and see, they're saying.
I know what you're talking about, but I think you're looking at 2 different benefit packages.
Well,
That's what you're looking at. You're not comparing apples to apples because the benefits in one included other stuff, and the
Well, I
benefits in
think-
the other didn't.
I think Andrea has a number. You go ahead, Andrea.
I just wanted to clarify, the information that I sent you, that you're referring to, was the Red Wing methodology that you had
Yeah, that's what I'm
asked the
talking
sheriff
about.
to put together, so that actually was the information that they
That's
put
apples
together.
to apples. That's our
Right, and that was
comparison
put
to-
together by finance and
Right.
the sheriff, and I just sent it out, so it wasn't actually a number that I put together, I just shared their information with the board.
But I think if you compared the last line of this sheet to what Andrea sent out, there's a $7,000 and some dollar, about a $7,000 difference.
Is there somebody who wants to offer a motion where we're going to go with this?
I would make a motion that we go with sheriff's recommendation with a 68.5 the first year, and then 2 more year contract on that. And I think that, I just feel there's going to be things coming down the road that we might have some more police contracts too. So I mean, there's a lot of things that might happen in the next couple of years for the sheriff's department. So, you know, I guess we make this one step. You know, we make this with the information that we have. Is it the right? Is it not the right? But I guess I would support this at this time to move this forward.
I'm sorry, did you say a 2-year contract or 3-year contract? 3,
Yep, this year and then 2 years, 3 total. Yep.
right? I'll second that.
Moved and seconded, we move forward with the contract with school resource officers at $68,599, $72,674, and $75,784 for a 3-year contract. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
3-2. Human Resource Personnel Committee packet. Thank you for all your work on that. Thank you. Finance, Sheriff's Office, Administration.
All right, good morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
The Personnel Committee met this morning and heard 2 reports. one of
Microphone
which
on?
will-
Is your microphone on?
What was that?
Is the microphone on?
It is.
You gotta get it closer.
All right, let's start over. Good morning. The Personnel Committee met this morning and heard 2 reports, one of which will go to the Health and Human Services Board a little later on this morning, one of which will come to you this morning from Land Use Management regarding a summer helper. And I guess I'll turn it over to you to kind of explain what the ask is.
Good morning, Commissioners. As Jessica said, we met earlier today at Personnel. What land use is looking to do is to hire a summer help that can help us scan and digitize what we call parcel files, which every parcel in the county has a physical record to it. In those parcel files are variances, mining registrations, conditional uses, building permits, violations, sometimes like feedlot information. Right now, we only really have digital files for the last, I'd say maybe 15 years. And going back to the 1970s, 1980s, specifically 80s to 90s period and the early 2000s, mostly everything is in a paper record. So again, what we're proposing is to take and hire someone that can come in the summer and take each parcel file, kind of carefully go through it. Sometimes there's information in there that's duplicate or photocopied wrong, but really carefully kind of go through each file, index it, and put it into a digital database. The intention here is to eventually get rid of our hard copy files and to rely on a backed up, essentially digital file. I believe that is hopefully a safer long-term place for some of these files. If you maybe look at some of the files from the 70s and 80s, they're already getting very brittle. Sometimes they've been photocopied a couple times, hard to read. So that is, again, the request to hire someone to get them in here to make as much progress as they can digitizing records. How I'm proposing to pay for this is to take the budgeted dollars that were planned for a zoning assistant. That zoning assistant was a budgeted, or essentially a budgeted person or budgeted employee personnel expense for 2025. There was $87,800 budgeted for that person. We are planning to hire a zoning assistant. That posting is going to go active here within a couple weeks, couple days. And so we'll have them on board, I'm anticipating by June, probably, which means of the $87,800 budgeted for that position, we're not going to use all of it because obviously January, February, March, April, May, we didn't have anyone. So taking that savings and hiring the summer intern or the summer help is essentially what's proposed. Obviously, summer help we can hire at a much lower rate than a full-time employee. We're not paying them full-time benefits. We're assuming a hiring rate of $17.50 an hour, which is the standard summer hourly rate. And I'm anticipating between 35 to 40 hours a week for this person. They would physically be here down in land use, minimal interactions with the public, really just sitting behind a laptop and a scanner most days. And we might ask them to do some other projects like assembling of packets for Board of Adjustment and Planning Commission and helping with some of those bulk mailings. But I would say 90% of the job is digitization of paper records. So with that, Personnel Committee did give the recommendation to approve this, and I'm looking for questions and feedback.
Questions?
I have one.
Go ahead.
My question is $17.50 a reasonable amount of money to hire a summer intern? And I ask that because I know Culver's pays $18. So just curious as to whether or not we're reasonable on this and we think we can do it.
Yeah, I mean, going into this winter, we did reach out to DDA to revisit what those summer help and intern rates of pay were, and they looked at a lot of our public sector competitors. I mean, really, whether or not it's competitive is what we end up seeing for applicants, but I can say for administration and HR, we've been able to find summer helpers at that rate of pay. I know Public Works hasn't necessarily had as the same response there too, but I think in that case, we're looking at Wabasha County that pays $20 an hour for their summer students at Public Works too, and I think that's relevant to that. I do think that this figure is realistic for this job.
Excellent, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? What's your wishes?
What did the Personnel Committee do?
We recommended approval to go forward.
Okay. I'll make a motion to recommend approval.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. The only comment I'll make is this is a multi-year project. It is not going to get done in this year. I think you mentioned 20 file cabinets full of
At
records.
least 20 file cabinets packed with they're organized by township, and each township has at least one file cabinet. Some of the townships have a couple. And so, yeah, we've got a whole room of cabinets.
So know that probably it will take a couple years of doing this, at least, to try to get it so we can get it in a safekeeping. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Same. Motion carries. For your information, there's 3 items there. New or old business? Go ahead.
So for informational items, there was one about the board signing a resolution for Fair Housing Month. So are we going to do that or not?
It's up to you. You want to move that forward?
Well, I certainly don't like the idea of somebody asking us to do something and then we don't even talk about it or whatever. It seems like a pretty simple thing, and I certainly would support fair housing. And all we're doing is saying that we're declaring April as Fair Housing Month. Therefore, yes, I would move to,
Adopt the proclamation?
yes, adopt the proclamation for April being Fair Housing Month.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor of declaring April Fair Housing Month, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. Thank you. Anything else under for information?
I have one, sir. Go ahead. I was at the Emergency Communications Board Regional meeting yesterday, and was it last month or in April here, we voted on that. We're looking for an administrative person to run that, and the estimated costs were at $3,334 for that position. Each county is going to pay that. In talking with Olmsted County, some figures were wrong on that, so it ended up being $1,570 additional, so.
Okay.
Good.
And does that come through the sheriff's budget? Okay. All right, good.
Doesn't happen very often, usually it's the other way.
No, it doesn't. Any other committee reports?
Committee reports, yes.
Go ahead.
So on the Association of Minnesota Counties, the education and training report, they had in March, I believe it was called Practical Leadership, Cultivating Thriving Supervisory Relationships. Well, apparently it was such a popular series that they are going to have it again in July. And they are sending information out and inviting and encouraging supervisors and commissioners to attend.
Good. Anybody else?
One more thing on that Emergency Communications Board. I know there's been a lot of talk about combining PSAPs, our dispatchers. Supposedly in the next 2 to 3 years, there's a big change around for our panels, the actual panel that sits in the dispatch. So it is going to be talked about more at our RAC meeting. That's where it's more the technical side of it, the sheriffs and the and their communications people. And you know, if it's ever going to work, now is the time to maybe open the discussions a little bit more. I know a lot of counties have invested a lot of money into their systems, you know, so it's, and I know we're sharing software already, which is a good savings, but you know, you know, when do you pull that trigger on actually closing down one dispatch and going somewhere else is it's something that definitely needs to be talked about more.
Rice and Steel are doing it. So. Good. Anything else, committee-wise?
Well, I just have a question. Do you think that's a type of issue we should get a cow on at some point?
Yeah. I I guess maybe we can ask Marty that since he just came back. At the Emergency Communications Board? Yeah.
I didn't hear the question.
Yep.
Well, you got the answer though, right?
Yeah.
Probably.
At the Southeast ECB yesterday, you know, there's talk about the Motorola's going to come up and we're going to have to replace our panels over the next how many years?
Correct.
You know, so there was definitely discussion after the meeting and at the end of the meeting about, is this a time to consolidate? And I know it's always a contentious issue with sheriff's departments, and there's a lot of investment in each one of these, you know, sitting there. So we're, you know, is this the time to actually say, hey, let's maybe look at more regional dispatches on that? So I don't know.
Ask my opinion?
Yep.
That's a no.
Okay.
And I think well, I think we last year, the commissioners even said it's probably not a feasible, and all the commissioners in that meeting, if you
Yep.
recall,
Right.
said it's not feasible. We've looked at the studies. We've done the studies. It's not cost effective, and it's convoluted at its core
Okay.
to try to do something like that.
I know there was a lot more talk that came up again yesterday with if each panel's costing 70,000, 60,000.
Yeah, and yes.
You know, some have 4, some have 5. I guess one of my questions is you have one town or county that's sitting there with, you know, 4 panels, the other one's with 4 panels. If they combine, how many do you still need? Do you need 8 panels then, or you just
Well, and keep in mind,
if you drop to 6?
Fortunate those panels will be covered by 911 funds, right?
Okay. Yep.
Those don't come out of the county budget. And then if they consolidate, the one county is going to get everybody's 911 funds. Well, now they'll only need, I don't know, I'm just going to guess 12 panels, where they're going to have 14 counties worth of 911 funds, and that's millions of dollars.
Yeah.
That is in excess of what they would actually have to spend for those consoles.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense, but
All right.
that's why Steel wanted to reach out to us, because quite frankly, they would prefer to have our 911 funds to help them set up their old building.
Well, there's definitely more talk about it, so that's why I brought it up.
It takes a long-term commitment by counties. It's not something you get into and out of and into and out of. It's, if you go that direction, you're that direction, and you better stay there for a long time, because it's not, and I've been a proponent of it for a long time to try to figure out ways we can consolidate, but there are challenges with it. I'm not going to lie.
I know I don't know if it's something that the state, you know, ECN would look at and say, okay, here's a better district, here's a better, you know, let's say we pull over to Steel and Rice, all of a sudden that leaves Wabasha out there by themselves. Maybe we're a better mix with Wabasha, and Winona's a better, you know, mix with Rochester or Olmsted, and, you know, I mean, just having some more guidance and look at the larger overall picture, so.
Right.
But
Well, and it would seem like if we were able to see 20 years down the road that there would be consolidation. That would be really a big surprise if there wasn't. Yeah. But that doesn't
modern
mean,
technology now, you can sit in, you
Yeah.
know, Rochester, Olmsted, and know
Right,
what's
right.
going on up in Ely, you can find the
Yeah.
address.
Well, absolutely.
Anything else from committees? If not, claims.
I want one more thing on committees. I just want to say it was good we sent that letter that Three Rivers asked for, and I meant to, that was under the consent agenda. They're trying to encourage that their block grants continue so they can continue to provide the services they are. And this was a letter in support of that, which I think was important.
Or two, consent agenda. How are those public service auctions working? I mean, is that, I don't know, Lucas, do you know how the money comes in? Is it been pretty fair? Is it a good idea, or we should still continue with?
I don't know of any issues that we've had. That money that comes back in, typically it's put right back into the capital plan to purchase replacement equipment.
All right. I mean, are we getting fair value for them versus trying to sell them by ourselves, or?
I think if we're talking about just excess equipment laying around, IT equipment, that kind of thing, it's a lot more efficient to run the auctions online like this than have staff go out there and try and sell things individually. I think this is way more efficient.
Great, thank you.
How are the auctions advertised? I mean, how do people know about them?
They are posted on our website, but Stacy actually runs a lot of that.
Public auction site.
Okay.
Good morning. So the auctions are typically, we throw it out on social media that it's on the public surplus site. We include it on our website. We typically send an email out to all county employees to let them know that we have an auction live at a certain time and also remind them of the rules and the statutes regarding auctions, whether or not if you're specifically involved with the listing of the item or the selling of the item, you are not eligible to bid on it. That's how we typically get the word out. Anybody who's subscribed on the public surplus auction website who's purchased things in the past, they also get emails when we list new items. And you can also, I think, sign up to watch out for items that come from Goodhue County. We have a couple different sites out there. We have our facilities maintenance site. We have the one where we do some of our larger equipment, and then we have the IT site.
So
we all
people
run
who are using the county websites would know, but people who don't pay any attention to the county websites wouldn't.
That's correct.
No.
Yep.
But I think people that are on the public auctions, kind of review all of them. There's
You mean from different counties?
different all
I
over
see.
the state. There's people that are
I can
fixated on.
comment on the last one that we had some equipment on. Those all sold for above Blue Book value. So I think we're doing pretty well, and we're going to put a few more of our unmarked squads on, something like that.
So there's actually a blue book on accordions? Because I happen to have one collecting dust in my basement that somebody bought.
That's a little bit different.
That accordion sat in our cold storage for like 15 years.
It's been a very resourceful tool and being able to move things along and actually find a new home for them. It minimizes staff time to use the public surplus. We're able to have everything documented, answer questions as they come in. We have a pretty smooth process, I think, amongst all of our departments with staff as to what we need to do.
And I think it gives county residents, because it's local, one of the comments we had, we're selling our squad cars over in Wisconsin 4 or 5 hours away. We're not even interested now, because people ask us, what do you do with your cars? Well, they go over to Wisconsin. Well, they're not interested. So
Right.
I think we're leaning towards
Right.
bringing it back to our county in one form or the other.
Right.
In public surplus, and I think that's a big benefit for the county residents too.
All right, now to claims.
Move to approve county claims.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the county claims as presented. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. We adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. Thank you.